Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for cash tags. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at Lightfolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so we're talking Uber, a big winner here so far in 2025, up 42%, going into earnings just below all-time highs. Do you guys have the data that kind of sets this up? Because it was kind of range-bound for, past 9 months before this spurt that we've seen over the last month and a half.
Yeah, so I think that we've talked with you guys in the past that we were seeing a little bit of a pullback in consumer demand for Uber. We were seeing consumers prioritizing other platforms and other kind of services spends, whether it was grocery delivery or things like that, were outperforming traditional Uber. But now we're seeing that flip. And if you look at our data across the board, we now have Uber at the top. And a lot of this is driven by strength, not just in its ride-sharing platform, but also its Uber Eats platform. We actually have Uber Eats year-over-year growth higher than the traditional just regular Uber platform. And so this tells us that the platform Uber at large is stealing a bit of market share from some other competitors. And a lot of this in chatter, we see growing interest in the Uber One offering. I think that this makes the platform really sticky. We know that users who are subscribers of that Uber One membership use Uber or Uber Eats more often than ones who aren't, and that now makes up about a third of its user base. So I think that that strategy is really smart, and we're starting to see signs of traction here. You can see on that chart there, Uber leading Lyft and also some other food delivery sites pretty significantly. So for us heading into earnings, our data looks positive, but the stock is also had a nice run this year, as you mentioned, so the bar is certainly high.
Megan, the robotaxi fears clearly were overblown here, at least in the short term. This company, mobility, delivery, both growing at fast rates. They're generating free cash flow. They're announcing that any softness, they're buying their own stock back. This is a company that they've already surpassed their 3-year outlook for gross bookings, adjusted EBITDA, and free cash flow. This is a pretty interesting company that they become more and more ingrained in people moving from one place to another, and what felt like kind of a gimmick when they started is now part of the fabric of traveling. I don't remember the last time I was in a cab versus an Uber. They're now part of most people's everyday life, Megan.
Yeah, and I think that Uber is probably perhaps the largest beneficiary of Tesla's just brand perception decline, because we used to say, okay, well, why would someone need Uber if they can just call a robotaxi? But now we're saying, wait a minute, maybe Tesla does need Uber. Maybe, any vehicle, any autonomous vehicle can tap into Uber's ever-growing network of consumers that are already used to using its products. And so, we know that Uber is expanding. I think it just announced a partnership with WeRide. And so it's expanding its own autonomous exposure in the Middle East and in Asia. And we know that it already has rides available via Waymo in Austin, I believe, and expanding to Atlanta soon if it's not already there. So, I think that is the next big growth catalyst for Uber if it can pull this off, because it's certainly building up its platform and building a very large consumer base who is getting very used to logging on and ordering food or, ordering that ride to or from the airport. And so Uber is definitely in a much better spot now than it was, say, last October.
Megan, when you look at this, especially at the beginning of February, Bill Ackman announced he bought 30 million shares of $30 million worth of, or 30 million shares of Uber. That kind of set us off on that tone. They beat pretty handily last earnings. Are you guys seeing any weakness in consumer spending? Because I always feel like Uber's right in the middle of it, right? They've got the platform, so they can partner if they're self-driving moving forward. I think when they got that scare at the end of 2024 that, hey, they were going to get left out, it's kind of gone away at this point. But are you seeing any trends? Because we're hearing about in travel and some other areas where people maybe aren't going out as much as they used to. Are you guys seeing any trends to the downside in that due to the macroeconomic uncertainty out there?
I'll say if you look at our data just on a month by month basis, our data was really strong through the end of March. So obviously a lot of travel with spring break, a lot of events going on, and it's cooled down some in April. And so that's something to watch for. There's a little bit of a pullback in our data. It goes from, it was really positive 6%. Then now in the month of April, it was pretty flat on a year over year basis. But it looks like in our data that Uber had a really nice quarter. It was nice to see that building momentum again. That was something that we haven't seen in some time with Uber. And as you mentioned, its last quarter was a really nice quarter. So we think that this quarter, the company will have good news to report. It really just comes down to whether or not the bar is too high where it sits now.
Yeah, it's just below all-time high. What's your earnings score on this one, Megan, going into the report?
So we are cautiously bullish on this name. Our score comes out at a 25. So for us, the data certainly supports a strong report, and we'll see how the market digests it.
Oh, bullish on it. Yeah, I think the bulls have liked this stock over the last month. All right, great stuff. Great data as always, Megan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at Likefolio, breaking it down for us.